the good word, y'all. DKB here. So, more veteran quarterback talk, right? In the midst of more recent reports coming out that the New York Jets may be higher on quarterback Ryan Tannehill than others outside the organization expect, Rob and Carton from the Robert and Carton Show, they were discussing Ryan Tannehill as a starter for the New York Jets. And the conversation went about as expected with anybody else I've had these conversations with. They don't love the idea of Ryan Tannehill being the quarterback that ends up falling into our laps. They don't see him necessarily, as I think we all do. We can't necessarily envision him being a primary target this offseason. But Evan actually posed a very interesting debate during the course of that conversation where he mentioned Ryan Tannehill has actually performed and been better than Derek Carr over the last couple of seasons, and this raised a huge alert in my brain, and I had to go and check it out for myself. And he's not necessarily wrong. I mean, you can take a look at these however you necessarily need to, but the conversation actually is a lot closer than expected. So let's take the last 3 years, which is what I ended up looking up. Derek Carr played 48 games. Ryan Tannehill played 45. Pretty straightforward there. Ryan Tannehill was able to win 29 of his games. Derek Carr won 24. Ryan Tannehill is averaging slightly better in terms of completion percentage. Derek Carr beats him in yards. He beats him in touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill throws less interceptions by a considerable margin. Ryan Tannehill is also better slightly in yards per attempt and slightly better in QBR, which is also accounting for an absolutely fantastic, I want to say 2019 season, where even when he got into the playoffs, he was on a tear. I think he threw like 5 touchdowns. I can't remember who it was against, but either way, Ryan Tannehill definitely hit the scene in a big way in 2019. Derek Carr has been able to avoid more sacks, which is huge for me because he's actually thrown 300 more pass attempts than what Ryan Tannehill has in what is a run-oriented offense with the Titans. And then when it comes into the clutch gene, Ryan Tannehill has 8 fourth-quarter comebacks. He has 10 game-winning drives. We see 10 by Derek Carr for fourth-quarter comebacks, and he has 24 game-winning drives in that same span, and that lets you know how much they've had to rely on the arm of Derek Carr in order to have the level of success that they've been having. It continues to get more interesting as you dive further and further in. The huge separation here between these two quarterbacks is the style of play, right? Ryan Tannehill is more of an athletically gifted quarterback, and so he's been able to rely to a much more efficient degree on some rushing attempts than what Derek Carr is. So 132 attempts for 634 yards and 16 touchdowns for Ryan Tannehill. Derek Carr only has 350 yards on 103 attempts for 3 touchdowns. So there's going to be the huge deficiency. That could be a major focal point, depending on how these conversations kind of evolve on who we want to, foresee ourselves going after. This could be a huge part of the conversation. Ryan Tannehill obviously has shown he can use that as part of his arsenal in the game. In fact, most of those 3 seasons, the majority of his rushing attempts went for first downs. They went for long gains. Derek Carr is essentially just using it as a facet to escape pressure and avoid some sacks and still get some positive momentum on a lot of his yardage. So I think that's pretty important. Within this same 3-season span, both quarterbacks have been able to enter the playoffs. We see losses across the board by each of them, which is going to be a huge concern. 2 losses for Tannehill, 1 for Derek Carr, but the performances look very much so different. 53.7% completion for Derek Carr, a touchdown, an interception, 3 sacks. Ryan Tannehill has 65.9% completion rate with 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 2 sacks. And so this is also not accounting for that spectacular game I was mentioning where he threw for 5 touchdowns. This is just within the last 3-year span. So one of the things outside of the stats that I thought was particularly interesting as well is what is the impact with the teams, right? Ultimately, everything kind of comes down to trying to win your division first. After you win your division, then you can kind of think about what who's the top player in your conference. Where do you feel like you kind of equate to, right? So when you take a look at the Titans, they're playing in the AFC South. Is not a strong contending division by any means when you compare it to a lot of the other divisions in the AFC. And so ideally the last couple of seasons you would want to see the Titans win, which they have been. They've been able to lead and win their division, I want to say 2 out of 3 years. How much do you want that to be based on what Ryan Tannehill was able to do? It's up to you. I mean, we see this most recent season where he was injured. He wasn't able to go out there. They had to rely on Malik Willis, which is supposed to be the quarterback of the future for them. They don't win the division as they have the prior 2 seasons. But they don't look like they're necessarily super far off. The Jags are able to sneak out behind Trevor Lawrence. When you look at the Derek Carr-led Raiders, though, it's a completely different story. They haven't been able to win a division. They haven't done so since, I think, 89, actually. But they have generally been second in the pecking order, only to the Chiefs in the AFC West. They've either tied or they beat out the Chargers and the Broncos consistently. And when you look at the calling cards for those teams, the Broncos have been a very, very strong top 5, top 10 worst case scenario led team for most of the last 3 to 5 years. The Chargers have enjoyed Justin Herbert. Prior to that, they've been working with Phillip Rivers, which I think a lot of people will make the argument he's easily better than Ryan Tannehill, than Derek Carr. Ryan Tannehill as well, I suppose. And yet, it is the Derek Carr-led Raiders that have been, fighting to compete with the Chiefs to lead with the division. And honestly, they've given the Chiefs a fair amount of trouble more often than not when it's come to being able to achieve outright victories in that division. So ultimately, taking a look at the stats, taking a look at the way the divisions have shaped up, taking a look at what they're asked to do, because I think that is another huge degree. Both quarterbacks have been able to get paired with very strong running backs in Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. But the Raiders definitely depend on Derek Carr's arm talent a lot more. Tannehill's been able to squeak out more of the victories, which is ultimately what we're looking for. But I think when you piece it all together, and I look at this, Derek Carr is clearly the winner. He's been able to do more with less. It's not like the Tennessee Titans have been a slouch on defense either. And so Derek Carr would be my preferred option still in this potential conversation. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Where do you lay with this? I don't even think this is a huge discussion, but I definitely thought it was interesting to look into. So Derek Carr for me. If it is Ryan Tannehill, as the quarterback you believe is better, feel free to let me know why in the comments. But hopefully we capture Derek Carr as our QB1. We let the man go to work with this defense and offense that we're building up, and we see a lot of success. But appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you again. Peace.